And good evening now. You are watching the trial of Alex Murdaugh After Hours. We're taking a look back at today's events in the courtroom. Today was the third day of testimony. Only 2 witnesses taking the stand today, but a lot of ground was covered. We begin with defense attorneys cross-examining state witness Melinda Worley. She is a SLED agent who responded to the crime scene on the night of the murders. She was asked by attorney Dick Harpootlian about a bloody footprint at the scene.
But there was a bloody footprint near his that turned out to be law enforcement, correct?
Yes.
In the feed room?
Right.
In blood? Is that preservation of the scene that your standards require?
Not exactly, no.
Not exactly? Should the police be walking through the scene?
No.
Do we know what other evidence they may have destroyed?
I have no idea.
That's right, we don't.
Well, Harpootlian also asked about a possible footprint on the back of Maggie Murdaugh's leg. Take a listen.
Somebody, even that night we see in notes, thinks that could be a footwear impression, or it could be something else, correct?
I couldn't determine what kind of impression it was. No.
Okay. But you would agree with me, there is something on the back of her leg that has some sort of pattern in it?
It is, yes.
Okay. Not naturally occurring pattern.
Right.
And this is the only photograph you received that night, or you received ever, of Maggie's calf, correct?
That's not the photo I used at all.
I'm sorry?
That's not the photograph I used at all for my footwear examination.
Now, the other witness today was SLED agent Jeff Croft. He spent most of the afternoon on the stand answering questions from prosecutor Creighton Waters. Croft was talking with investigators and seizing guns on the Murdaugh property. He brought out a .300 blackout rifle that was found on the property. Prosecution said the gun was loaded with the same type of bullets that killed Maggie and were found near her body.
What's that?
This would be the magazine which I removed from this rifle on the video, and the ammunition which it contained.
All right. And what kind of ammunition is that?
It's head stamped S&B 300 blackout.
All right. And do you know the specific brand and make and caliber of ammunition that was used to kill Maggie Murdaugh?
The head stamps on the shell casings at the crime scene was S&B 300 blackout.
Same thing?
Yes, sir.
Let's talk a little bit about this firearm. What is this thing on the top here?
That is a, I call it an optic, but it's actually a thermal scope, which can be used for shooting in the dark.
Video from Croft's body camera also released this afternoon, and it shows agents inside the Murdaugh family's gun room. A large number of guns were found inside the home. They were taken by SLED and tested. Defense attorneys objected to the guns being allowed as evidence, but they were overruled. Images of other evidence also shared with the public today. These items were entered as evidence by state prosecutors and includes images of shell casings found at the scene of those shooting deaths. Croft was on the stand for several hours today, and he testified about more than the guns found on the property. Sam Perez has more on the body cam footage from 3 days after the shooting deaths that was played for the first time in court.
The video is of an interview between Murdaugh and SLED agents Dave Owen and Jeff Croft. In the recording, Murdaugh said he started the day at the office. Then Croft testified that Murdaugh said he came home early to ride around the family's hunting property with his son Paul.
And one of the things he told you is they were riding around looking for hogs. Is that right?
Looking for hogs, yes, sir.
We rode around the duck pond. I mean, we just, we rode the property. At some point, we were all back at the house together. Maggie had gotten home, and, we sat down, we ate supper.
Then Murdaugh claims he took a nap and went to visit his mother. When he got back shortly after, he says he found his wife and son shot to death. The prosecution argues that he was the one who killed them. Reporting in Walterboro, Sam Perez, News 19 WLTX.
And that testimony ended at about 5:10 this afternoon. Court will resume tomorrow morning at 9:30. I'm being joined now by Luke Shealy. He's a criminal attorney here in Columbia to talk about what's happening with the Murdaugh trial right now. So let me get your take on all of this gun testimony today, all these images that were released. How big of a deal is it for the jury to see something like this?
Well, it is important. It's a big deal. It depends on really who your perspective is. I mean, the state wants to show that they're doing a very thorough investigation, that they're collecting evidence and testing evidence. You may have heard and recall some objections by defense counsel saying, hey, this isn't relevant. And that's because they know what the jury doesn't know just yet is the significance of a firearms report and whether certain items of evidence and guns actually match, or are they inconclusive or not a match. But the state wants to show it's being thorough, but it does kind of cut against the grain there, where you don't want someone to be painted as kind of a over-the-top monstrous gun owner, because then the jury might think, well, he's got so many guns, maybe he just likes to do bad things with guns. And so that's what you want to be concerned about a little bit.
Defense attorney Dick Harpootlian objecting today to all those guns being entered as to evidence. Why the objection, and why do you think the judge allowed it?
Well, he allowed it because Judge Newman kind of allows more than restricts. He doesn't like to knock out things that he knows might be relevant. The state is going to assert it's relevant under the rules, but the rule is also, well, it may be relevant, but you don't want it to be so unduly prejudicial that it outweighs its probative nature. And so what Mr. Harpootlian knows is that some of those guns have nothing to do with this case. They're just showing that they were collected and test fired. But what's really going to be interesting is when you get to those Blackout 300 rifles, and there's only one in evidence and it was test fired, but it appears that we're missing at least two that the Murdaughs had. So that's going to be the big battle that will be coming up for future witnesses. And
Murdaugh could be heard on video today basically saying to SLED agents that one of the guns had been stolen, but it wasn't reported to the police when it should have been reported. So again, a missing gun out there, at least according to Murdaugh when he talked to SLED agents.
Yeah, it seems the way this evidence is shaping up is that it's probably not going to be contested that there were 3 Blackout rifles, one that Murdaugh had and 2 that his sons had, with the one being either stolen or missing, and we've got 1 in evidence. So the state's going to want to say, well, the 3rd one that's missing perhaps is Mr. Murdaugh's, and he maybe got rid of it after the crime, whereas the defense will say, well, there's guns missing. It's either totally irrelevant, just happens to be a similar chambered caliber rifle, or maybe potentially it's Paul's that was stolen or misplaced at some point, a year prior. So that's going to be the battle right now. But go ahead.
The defense making a big deal right now that no blood splatter, no blood of any kind was found on Alex Murdaugh when they talked to him the evening that the shooting deaths happened.
That's correct. I mean, the nature of this crime, these jurors are asked to use their common sense, and common sense would dictate that if you're in close contact with high-powered weapons such as this rifle and shotgun, that you have a potential for blood spatter. We lawyers know, and some members of the media and public know from looking at the filings, that they've heartily objected to one expert in particular about blood spatter analysis, and their beef will be, well, there's no blood on the shirt. SLED knew that, but they sent it out for testing anyway. But I don't know. It seems like the state is kind of leaning into this idea that he doesn't have any blood. He seems very clean. So maybe they're just kind of leaning into the concept that maybe he's getting rid of evidence, bloody shirts, weapons. So that might be kind of where they're going, and we'll see how it plays out.
Have we heard anything about gun residue on his hands yet? Has that come out in court yet? I don't think we've heard that.
We haven't. I expect we'll be hearing that soon. I don't know that they've actually tested his hands. I know they tested items of clothing. I think the shirt in question doesn't really have much, if memory serves from the defense's motion. And I think they alluded in their opening argument that there'll be some evidence in his car. But gunshot residue can be explained. You can get it from holding a gun, from touching someone who's been in close proximity to a shot, such as victims of crime. So there's multiple ways on either side how that could be explained. Just depends on who explains it better.
I know a lot was made last week that there were like 255 potential witnesses in this case. 255 people are not going to testify in this case, I know, right?
No, absolutely not. you have to name your witness list as a lawyer for either side, because potentially if you don't name a potential witness and then something changes in mid-course of the trial and you feel like you need that witness, the judge can say, well, sorry, you didn't name him. So you really kind of do it out of an abundance of caution, but they're only going to call a fraction of those folks.
The defense team, as you know, and as many of our viewers know, the defense team only has to put a seed of doubt in one juror.
That's
Do you
correct.
think Dick Harpootlian is doing that right now with the evidence that he's going over in court right now?
Well, it's still early days, in my opinion. We've got a long way to go. He did score some pretty good points today with the crime scene investigator. He did get her, based on trajectory analysis of 2 potential entry points, he did get her to say that it's possible that could be from 2 different assailants. And that's the type of thing you want to do. You want to plant that seed and then hold on to it. And he was able to get some good points about sloppy crime scene preservation, footprints made by law enforcement officers that really shouldn't be there. So I think there's a lot to come. And he's got a very kind of conversational style that is a little different from what we're seeing from the state right now, but that's just who he is. So.
What about, I know it's early, but what about the prosecution? Do you think they're doing a good job of laying out their case to get a conviction here?
I think they are. I mean, they've got a lot of evidence to work with, and being a defense lawyer, when you're in the prosecution's case, you always feel like you're kind of swimming against the current a little bit, but they're in all the photos and the blood and the gore, and they are doing a good job of keeping a good rhythm that's engaging, and trying to be a little dramatic at certain points to keep the interest. So I can't really fault them right now. The only thing I will fault is the comment today about the audio recording of Mr. Murdaugh during his interview, where they asked for the interpretation of what he said about something like, regarding his dead son, I did him wrong or something to that effect. And I could tell by the reaction of Mr. Murdaugh that I don't think that's what he would claim he said during that interview. But so I don't know if it's just kind of a little bit of taking an opportunity there and let it rest with the jury, or if they're trying to bait Mr. Murdaugh into testifying. But it seemed pretty clear from the defense table that they were a little upset with that comment.
As a criminal attorney, what do you take with the public's fascination with all of this right now?
It's to be expected on a case like this. You have to take it with a grain of salt. Even on lesser cases, sometimes the media will catch hold of it. It's newsworthy, and you have to kind of put your blinders on and do your job for your client and make sure you stay focused, and not get too caught up in the sideshow of it all. But it's about as much media as I would expect, and surprisingly even more than I expected. So it's good for the observer, but the people that are in the trenches, it can be very stressful.
All right. I want to thank you so much for your time and
right.
your expertise. I know we'll be talking in the evenings ahead.
All right. Sounds good.
And of course, we will continue to have full coverage of the Alex Murdaugh trial on air and online. You can watch on our website, WLTX.com. You can watch on YouTube. You can watch on WLTX Plus as well for the latest minute-by-minute developments. And again, testimony resuming tomorrow morning at 9:30, and News 19, of course, will be there to bring you all the testimony as it happens. I want to thank you for tuning in here. We'll see you again tomorrow.